We are breaking into Mornings on One right now because we are following breaking news in two major stories. For one, we have a significant update in the search for the shooter in the killing of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. But first, we want to bring you an update in the trial of Daniel Penny. The jury has found Penny not guilty of criminally negligent homicide. He has been acquitted. A reminder that this comes after the judge agreed to drop the top charge of second-degree manslaughter after the jurors could not come to a unanimous decision. That drop came after multiple times that the jury came back asking the judge to tell them what to do next because they could not come to a choice. He gave them several Allen charges, telling them to continue deliberating. But again, the jury finds Daniel Penny not guilty of criminally negligent homicide. We are going to have full coverage of both of these stories, Daniel Penny as well as the CEO, the healthcare CEO killing. Before we get to all that, let's start with Ayanna Harry. She is outside of the courthouse in Lower Manhattan. Ayanna, hearing perhaps some protesters behind you, some commotion going on behind you. How are people reacting to this so far? There's strong opinions for sure. And Ayanna, although Jordan Neely's family, obviously this is a loss for them, they're still trying to go after Penny in court in some way, recently filing this civil lawsuit. Can you talk to us about that as well? I want to turn now to Jeremy Saland to talk about this, what this means from a legal perspective. Jeremy, what are your thoughts? They were not deliberating for that long on this lesser charge that the judge allowed them to strictly consider here. Let's head to Bob Hart, who joins me in the studio. Again, Bob, keeping track of these two huge stories. There is someone that is in custody in Pennsylvania. They're being questioned. We're still trying to figure out what exactly this means, but really the first big break in this case. Bob Hart joining me back on the set. Again, hearing from Jordan Neely's family, a lot of anger. Some of the notes that I took saying the jury gave up on us. They actually praised the district attorney's office, still believing that they did a good job despite all this. What are your takeaways from what we heard? We are hearing that the NYPD is going to be part of this questioning with someone in Pennsylvania. Let's bring in former NYPD Chief of Department and Executive Advisory of the University of Chicago's Policing Leadership Academy, Kenneth Corey. Thank you so much for joining us. Your thoughts on the latest information that we are getting, possibly have the guy in Pennsylvania. And I'm curious now that it is outside the scope of New York City, how much or does that at all complicate this matter when you have to work with all these other departments to try to find this guy? Yeah, why did you do it? And I think a lot of people want to know how he did it. I mean, even the NYPD in their own briefings were saying how, you know, he was smooth with clearing the jam in the gun and he seemed like he knew what he was doing. So where did he get those skills from? And welcome back to News All Day. Thanks so much for staying with us on what is already shaping up to be an extremely busy news day. Two major stories right now. Daniel Penny found not guilty in his trial in the chokehold death of Jordan Neely. We are keeping track of that. Another major development we're following today. Law enforcement sources telling New York One that a person of interest has been detained in the murder of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. Sources telling us that the man was taken into custody near Altoona, Pennsylvania, was in possession of a gun similar to the one used in the assassination-style killing last week in Midtown. Now, the NYPD was not part of the detainment, but they are heading there now to be part of the questioning. Over the weekend, the NYPD releasing new surveillance images of the person of interest, including one from the back of a taxi. Here it is, again, wearing a mask, so you can't get a full picture of what this person of interest looks like, but a better picture than we have seen up until recently. Now, this comes as police continue to search Central Park for evidence linked to the shooter. Dive teams are out there again today after finding a backpack in the park on Friday. I want to bring in Norlane Kawaja. She joins us now from Central Park with the latest on what's going on there. Of course, honing in specifically here in Norlane, looking for any evidence that they can to figure out who this person is and why he did this. Okay, you have been listening to the question and answer session after Governor Hochul's revival of the congestion pricing plan. Hi, everybody. I'm Shannan Ferry. Thank you for joining us and welcome to News All Day. Now, as you may remember, this revival comes just months after she halted the plan, indefinitely paused the plan, and this was days before it was set to take effect. Here are the changes to the plan that the governor says is set to begin in January. They're eyeing January 5th, although that does not seem definitive. The toll for a passenger car entering the congestion zone in the daytime hours will be $9. This is down, of course, from the original $15 fee. Overnight hours, that fee will be $2.25. Now, for trucks, small commercial vehicles would pay just over $14, and then larger trucks would pay a little under $22. A lot to break down here for sure. And joining me on the set to discuss this, political director Bob Hart and political reporter Courtney Gross. Great to have you both here. Bob, your takeaways from what we saw here with Governor Hochul. It was also interesting to hear General Lieber respond to those same questions about the Trump administration and whether or not he'll try to push back. I actually want to play some of that sound. He was pushing back on the idea that President-elect Trump will try to squash the plan, adding that, a lot is said during campaigns. Here's that snippet. I think all of us actually have a unique perspective on this. Rockaways, and I personally am a Manhattan subway user now, but I used to live in Little Neck, Queens, where there is no subway. Yeah. There is the Long Island Railroad, but that runs maybe 3 times an hour during rush hour. Compare that to every 3 minutes on the subway. But the math is still not mathing for me how we get to this $15 billion. How do we get there when it's $9 now? It is just about 1:01 here on this Tuesday, November the 5th. Welcome to News All Day on this election day. We're going to get to all of your top stories, everything you need to know about the race in just a few minutes. But before we do, let's get a check of the weather. And Guy, the campaigns, they always hope for good election day weather, at least here in New York. We are dry and it is pretty mild out there.
Yes.
The election will not only decide who will occupy the White House for the next 4 years, but also which party controls both the U.S. House of Representatives and the Senate. All 435 members of the House face re-election today, and Republicans are looking to expand their narrow majority after 2 years in power. I want to bring in our Washington Bureau reporter Kevin Fry for more insight. Kevin, break this down for us. What would switching this over look like? Great to hear from all those New Yorkers getting out and voting. Eric, thank you so much. We're going to head over to Roger now. He is in Park Slope, where Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer cast his vote. Roger, how's it looking over there? Eric, not long lines. What about over where you are? So much to do, so much to prepare for today. Great to see you again. The commission again overseeing the entire poll worker structure, the vote counting, the certification process. Talk to me about what goes into something like that. Time for another check of that forecast, Guy. That mild streak continues and dry streak as well. We've been talking about this drought watch. Still no rain projected in the forecast until at least this weekend.
Shannon.
And welcome back to News All Day as we continue to follow breaking news here on New York One. Mayor Adams has officially entered a plea. He pleaded not guilty to bribery, fraud, and other charges in this federal indictment that we've been telling you about. He surrendered earlier today to federal authorities in Lower Manhattan. And Adams stood by his lawyer as he exited the courthouse, and that lawyer spoke briefly to the press. And we have team coverage for you this afternoon. We have Errol Lewis and Bernadette Hogan in the studio. Dan Rivoli standing by for us outside of the mayor's residence at Gracie Mansion. But before we get to them, we want to get to Kelly Mena. She is outside of the courthouse for us. Kelly, you were inside of the courtroom, though, when Adams entered this plea. Talk to us about what you saw. What did the mayor seem like? You're so familiar with him, covering him every day. Dan, people who live on the Upper East Side know the area around Gracie Mansion, not typically bustling with activity. It's kind of quiet. It's near Carl Schurz Park, but very different the last couple of days. I want to pick up where Dan left off there, talking about Mayor Adams' lawyer and getting a taste of the defense. I mean, as he said, a celebrity lawyer, very high-profile lawyer, and starting this argument that this is the flight upgrade case. What do you make of what we've heard so far?
Well, he's focusing on the parts that he thinks will be strongest for his client.
12:01 on this Friday, September 27th. Welcome to News All Day, everybody. I'm Shannan Ferry. Of course, we have another very busy news day here in the city, and we will get to your top stories in just a little bit. But before we get to your top stories, we want to start with the weather. And here's meteorologist Guy Brown. And Guy, those clouds are in control for today. When will we see the sun again?
It's going to be a while.
Okay.
Shannon, we have
next month, which is like just a couple of days away, but
really?
Next month,
yeah.
Just to be a little dramatic.
Well,
Now, he is also expected to move out of the courthouse just momentarily because this arraignment just wrapped up a short time ago. Again, he surrendered to federal authorities earlier today in Lower Manhattan. Again, a live picture here of the courthouse. We have live team coverage all across the city, uptown at Gracie Mansion, and of course downtown by the courthouse. And we have Bernadette Hogan here in studio to talk about it. Okay, no surprise here, Bern, that he entered this not guilty plea, but just doubling down on what he has been saying, that he's going to fight this, and he said he wants a quick trial. And I think what you point out about the passport, it's one of the unique things about being a mayor under federal indictment. You're not really a flight risk, so it makes sense that they didn't make him surrender his passport. But listen, the judge was also warning Adams, like any other defendant, if you violate any of these terms, or if you don't show up to court next week, there will be consequences to that. It is cloudy out there in that shot, and that's pretty much the theme, not just for today, Guy, but also for the next couple of days. We had a sunny streak, now that's over, and we have to deal with our cloudy streak.
Yep, it's our turn now. We got.
If Hochul calls on you to resign, will you? Did you take free hotel room?
So there you have it. Mayor Adams not speaking himself, but rather his lawyers speaking after this arraignment where he entered a plea of not guilty. A lot of news cameras outside of the courthouse, of course, and you can see the mayor now getting into his car, getting away from it here. And he also, again, as Dan Rivley was telling you, he has other events on his calendar for today. So again, you're seeing this live picture, the mayor leaving the courthouse. Let's break down what we just heard. Bern, I'll start with you because you did mention that word spectacle that we continue to hear from Mayor Adams' lawyers. Their case is that these prosecutors are basically just thirsty for a high-profile case. Senator, do you think that the Democratic Party needs to unite in telling Mayor Adams to resign? Because even on the national level, we haven't seen unity. Some people are pausing before saying Mayor Adams should resign, saying we need to let this process play out a little bit. What do you think the Democratic Party needs to do right now with this situation?